Welcome to the Game On podcast. Tonight, Sydney draw first blood in the 2024 Grand Final. But a former Crow sets the Lions on the right path. And Brisbane timed their run to perfection and a win in the Grand Final by 60 points. All right, let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. My name's Pete, once again joined in the studio with Malcolm here. And, mate, what was your good for the weekend?
Oscar McInerney, the amount of enjoyment he gathered and spread the love. And, you know, I thought his example at not being the player, shitty in the back row that I'm injured, jumped on board, you know, his embrace with Darcy Fort, with Fagan, and then Fagan and Matthews. They were the couple of
the big highlights.
Yeah, from what wasn't, as a neutral, wasn't a great game. Brisbane played very well.
Absolutely.
Sydney played poorly. We'll cover that in depth, though.
We will indeed. I think my good for the weekend was probably that organic celebrations, like you've said there. I can't go past those highlighted incidents that you've obviously brought up there. I think the other good one was that the Melbourne Storm are through to another grand final again. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. But let's get into Around the Grounds, mate.
Around the Grounds.
All right, with the AFL pulling back a little bit, we're going to have a bit of a look at the basketball, the cricket and the soccer locally here in Adelaide. But to kick off, we better finish off with the AFL. And huge congratulations go to the Brisbane Lions. And it's a season like we've never seen before. And a result like this sort of puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
Well, quite crazily, they're 44 points down against GWS in the
qualifying semi,
qualifying first one, whatever. They're gone. One more goal and they're gone, and come back and win from there. They're then 25 points down against Geelong. Geelong made a couple of errors, probably a couple of umpiring decisions were a little bit unlucky, but I thought it was more Geelong's errors.
Yes, and
then come through and win. Now, I want to cover a couple of things. We watched the Sydney-Port game where Sydney basically kept the ball off Port Adelaide, chipped it around, and then basically Brisbane did the same thing to Sydney.
Yes.
Now, we are interviewing, he mightn't be here, but we're interviewing Col Gerloff later on. Congratulating for Glenelg, much as that's going to hurt.
Yeah, it's going to sting, but that's okay.
On that, but I intend to ask him the point of, now, we could see that admittedly, it's hard where you're watching it on TV to try and pick everything up. Now, undoubtedly, Sydney pushed the half forward up into the contest, which then left Andrews and Starcevic, where, yes, Parker was meant to be on Andrews, but Andrews was too tall. Starcevic more alone, Leicester, and set it up from there. Am I being too simplistic? And games now where game plans and all of it, where the players have more say than we used to. You know, again, I'm older than you, Pete, but it used to, even still when you played. With me, it was very much do what the coach says. Where now it's not. It's a collaboration together. But with the warning bells really ringing loudly very early in the second quarter, where's that not the bit, shit, let's just go man on man. Let's try and create this into a slugfest and go in at halftime a couple of goals down and still in the game. Nothing happened, really. Seemingly nothing happened. Sydney's disposal was their worst for the year. The turnovers and all that.
Mind you, the pressure was pretty big.
Pressure was good.
Was very good by
Sydney. Brisbane behind the ball were excellent and all that side of things, but I thought Sydney then contributed to that. But I just want to try something. Because at halftime, the game's over. I'm not sure where you watched it, Pete. I was at the Arca Bar. Halftime, it was just really ho-hum. Everyone just started having their normal conversations, you know, away from the footy. I did all right. I sold more books than Sydney kicked
Kick
goals, so I
yep,
did all right.
He did very well.
But it was just ho-hum. Now, try and at least go, right, shit, let's crash in. Let's try and make something, but nothing.
So my question there is obviously Sydney, by the sounds of it, went in with players a little bit injured. You can't take players into grand finals that are injured, but they also hadn't played a lot of football in the last few weeks because of obviously finishing top and then winning their first final. Their form line leading up to the finals wasn't exactly great either. So is it a surprise that they did lose the way they did though?
Maybe not, but I got to admit, I giggle at the line at, got to be fully fit. No one's fully fit this time of year.
No.
I'm just saying, right, I'm not sure on Nord this year, but I know in 2022 there were 7 players who were injected to play, who every one of those 7, realistically, and especially a couple of them, supposedly shouldn't play. And it takes me a fair bit nowadays to be blown away, and Nick Rokar's ability to carry pain, I've got up in the top few I've ever seen. So in that way. Now, Lachie Neale, his foot's stuffed.
This is what I was alluding to.
I always take that with a grain of salt.
Yep.
Look, I think you've got to criticise him for McDonald, because McDonald, he looked
lame.
Terrible.
Yeah, he looked lame right from the get-go.
And I thought that one, he deserves to get slated. A couple of the others. At Heaney, you're banking on him battling through. Let's remember at that stage of being the player of the final series. You're going to go with him. But it does blow a little bit that, hang on, he went with McDonald, but he didn't go with Callum Mills. So that, again, that's almost a bit of mixed messaging as well. So,
it's a hard one,
It's a bit amusing.
Mate, where do we see Sydney going after that second quarter capitulation, which has not only happened once now, but it's happened twice? Do they look to break down their squad and tear it down and start again, trade in, trade out? How do they recover from this from here?
I think at the moment they wouldn't know, really. That you've got, and stats show it. The teams, if there's a team which gets thumped in the grand final, they quite often don't make the 8 the following year. Sydney didn't when they got thumped by Geelong. So it's an interesting one there, and there's a hell of a lot of soul searching at the moment on guns like Golden and Heaney, and they're very much 0 for 2 from grand final performances. So
they sort of went missing when it counted the most.
Both. So I'm sure in that way, it's going to have to be some heated questions. It'll just be interesting to see what happens.
So looking back at Sydney's grand final record, John Longmire, I think he's still the right coach for Sydney in the scheme of things. They just need a couple of things to go their way. 2005, they win by 4 points. 2006, they lose by a point. 2012, they win the premiership there over Hawthorn. And then this run of 4 grand finals in a row where they lose by 53 points to Hawthorn, 22 points to the Western Bulldogs, 81 points to Geelong, and 60 points to the Brisbane Lions.
3 out of those 4, those games were over pretty easy. 22 points is a little bit faux pas, because I reckon Western Bulldogs kicked 2 goals in the last 2 minutes. So I'll take that one. That one was fine. But the other 3,
Do John Longmire, does he soul search and go, maybe this isn't the right thing for him right at this moment? Because I still think he's got plenty to offer, but they need to change something drastically.
Oh, look, their administration won't muck around. They're very well led in that regard. Look, I had to laugh when someone tried to say on Facebook, some bloody idiot, that Andrew Pridham was too nice. You don't end up where he is with Andrew Pridham not being too nice. And let's just say there's plenty of people at the AFL and that in general nearly pull a hamstring running with Andrew Pridham's walking towards them. So, that's out of anything I've seen posted since, that's the most stupid comment. So, Yeah, they're well led. They're ruthlessly efficient. Huge respect for Tom Harley, obviously, and that side of things. So they couldn't be better led off the ground. So let's just wait and see. But yeah,
Is it
geez, there's some
Longmire's
questions.
decision or is it the club's decision?
Oh, it'd be both. It'll be collaborate.
Yep.
But there'd be a few nervous players at the moment, I would think.
Absolutely. All right, now here's my big question for you. Would you rather make a grand final than not make a grand final? Because obviously locally here, Port Adelaide haven't made a grand final since 2004, yet Sydney have played in, 6, 7 now?
I've always said I'd rather make it, but I've got to be honest, as a Nord man, this one burns a lot deeper than anyone else because I think we made errors ourselves, which will always eat at me that I disagree with a few things which happen.
Yep.
So,
There's a few grand finals like that go on throughout the years. But, obviously swinging it over to Port Adelaide, they haven't made one for a while, and this seems to be the crux of the argument with their coaching side of things.
I think overall, if you look at that Port list, I think Hinkley's done a great job to get that list.
Yep.
And I think there's a huge gap between their best players. Yes, are very, very good.
Yep.
But, geez, they fall away. The one thing I will say, I thought the other thing which stood out for me was Geelong have easily the best midfield defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Dunkley is a gun defensively.
Yep.
But Neil and Ashcroft work back, I reckon, more than any other midfield. And so that was my bit there where I'm going, their balance is perfect.
Yep.
And now let's remember too, Ashcroft's 19, coming back from a knee reco, which is pretty incredible. And, geez, wait till you see his brother.
Well, yes, I've heard good things.
Wait till you see his brother.
Yep.
Out of that. Now, you've also got, let's also remember, Kitty Coleman showed a lot in play. Dode hasn't even debuted yet.
Yep.
Lincoln McCarthy, Oscar McInerney. They've got a lot of guys where they can drive the bus with next year. Righto, you mongrels. Don't fall away. Come on. Let's keep going.
Yep.
And Lincoln McCarthy and Lockie Neal are best mates.
Yep.
Now you can see that Lockie Neal will be going, hey, let's win one for Link, except out of that side of things. So I reckon there's some things there.
It's funny how you think about going back to the past and the Crows doing it in 97, 98 for the 98 guys to get their premiership. There's a real want, will and desire, I reckon, for Brisbane to do the same. Those names were Levi Ashcroft, Sam Marshall, Oscar McInerney, Tom Doedee, Kitty Coleman, Lincoln McCarthy, and Darcy Gardner. Yeah, that automatically is start the car, isn't it?
Oh, I know we go overboard on the reigning premier. And look, Collingwood last year, I wasn't like that.
Yep.
Where I went, hang on, the age bracket of how Pendlebury Sidebottom losing Murphy, I always said was absolutely crucial for Collingwood, and that turned out to probably be the most accurate point I've said since we started this podcast.
Well, Darcy struggled, didn't he? Because
without Murphy there to be his swingman effectively and cover for him. So, and that's all they've got dominant for. Keeping Joe Danaher playing is vital. Well, that's if he did decide to retire, all of a sudden that does change things.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you think that he will retire?
Oh, look, he's a different cat. He lives at Byron Bay.
It's 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yeah, so he is different.
Yep.
Flies separately, and so it's weird.
Yep.
But
hey, it works.
Yeah.
He became sort of Mr. September there for a little while there. There was a couple of games where he really got them back into it.
The 2 goals he kicked against GWS got him over the line. Mm-hmm. So I reckon he owes one of the umpires a few beers for one of them.
Fair enough. Yeah. Obviously, the 2 grand final teams we're concentrating on here, but the couple that missed out, Geelong look like they're going to recruit fairly well, and we'll talk about this with Trade Whispers in a minute. Port Adelaide, Lukosius, do we see that deal getting done? And does that make Port Adelaide better? Or does that cancel out with Houston potentially leaving? But I'm actually of the belief that Port are going to hold firm here and go, we're not giving him up if we don't get the right deal.
Possibly, but they did do that once before with Nick Stevens.
That's right.
And you can argue with, did that help or not in the long run? Who's not sure? I'm not convinced. Look, very rarely do players end up being forced to stay. Probably Trying to think, the most famous in that regard was Ryan O'Keefe, who was nearly out the door to go to Hawthorn. Ended up staying and won the Norm Smith. So there are examples, but at the moment, still a lot of water to go under the bridge.
Absolutely.
A lot of smoke and mirrors. You got to take, and
we'll talk about. I've
who
got a
knows
list
on the media how much of that's true and how much is bullshit.
I've got a list here that we'll go through in a little minute in trade whispers.
Well, let's say a couple of those guys in the media,
take it with a pinch of salt.
Yes,
No, I totally get it. Let's move on to the local teams here. Adelaide, after securing Isaac coming to the Crows, they're eyeing off another GWS midfielder, James Peatling.
Of which 7 clubs are chasing him. So he's in demand. He's the one at the moment who's sitting pretty. And the other one, he's announced where he's going today. It's Perryman.
Yep.
Not sure how that affects Port. Does that make them more insistent on keeping Houston to stay? They thought they've had Perryman the whole year.
Yes.
So to lose him at the nearly 11th hour, it does change things a bit. Look, I think Lukosius is a very good player, but I'm not convinced key forward's his best spot. I think his best spot is still the Tom Lynch role, roaming and using his elite disposal by foot.
Yep.
So not sure there how they're going to use him yet.
So let's just say hypothetically Marshall does play on. We're sort of thinking he may not because of obviously the concussion side of things. But let's just say he does stay on. And Ollie Lord seems to be the other name that's been thrown up as a potential trade at the moment. But if they keep all of those, how do they fit them all in? That's the question.
Well, because they're all a little bit similar too.
It's a big forward line though. It's a tall forward line.
Yeah, I think Lukosius is pretty mobile and Georgiadis is pretty mobile as well. So, yeah, it'd be question marks. As I said, I'd love to see Lukosius play on a wing.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Let's wait and see.
No, fair enough. Obviously, we talked Adelaide there. We're going to talk Port Adelaide. It seems like the Houston deal's not going to get done, which we did just touch on a minute ago.
I'll still have a bet it gets done in the end.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But is it a stretch too far at the moment? Carlton are unwilling to meet it. Is it North Melbourne that comes into play here?
Yeah, which I still don't think Houston will want to go there. I reckon he'd be pretty keen to try and beat a club which is contending, not rebuilding.
Yep.
So,
well, I'm glad from a Carlton point of view, you're thinking that Carlton could potentially contend.
Yeah, oh, very much so. You know, let's be real. Carlton were right up there. Injuries caught up. Probably a bit of a lack of depth. Maybe also the coach not trusting a few of the youngsters enough there. So it'll be interesting to see if Voss changes in that way now.
Well, you look at Brisbane; they were forced to sort of get their youngsters going, and they unearthed some guns. That's for sure.
Well, M. Blight admits that his youth bit at Adelaide came from where he, in his summing up of his time at Geelong,
was stubborn. Yep.
That he trusted too many of the older guys, and he went right. I'm not doing that again. And he showed that as soon as he arrived at Adelaide, but also just things like Andrew Eccles is playing for Nord Reserves in round 18 and plays in an AFL Premiership side a month later, sort of thing. So incredible things like that.
Do we see Adelaide, Matty Nix, sort of going down that path with a couple of gun recruits?
I hope so, and just use some of the youngsters far more. Dowling, for mine, he can really play and should have been used more. I think there's 3 or 4 youngsters at Adelaide who are a chance to make an impact. Use them.
You'd think Curtin would probably take that next step.
I would hope so.
What about Draper? The Crows got picked, 4, but that'll slide probably to 6. They've flagged their interest of not giving up that pick, and they're going to pick him up. Do they chuck him in? I mean, he looks like a big-bodied midfielder already playing at SANFL.
Mine, if West Coast don't pick him, because don't worry, West Coast are a bit into him. If West Coast don't pick him, I desperately hope Adelaide do. I've seen a fair bit of him. There's some people saying, this year he wasn't good enough in the 18s. He carried an injury and he really probably shouldn't even have played the 18th Nationals. Having seen him the year before when he was All-Australian as a bottom major.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, the other one in that regard was the previous guest on the show, and Timmy G.
Yes.
But I watched him last year and went, shit.
Yep.
I've seen him play enough. I rate him highly.
Yep. Fair enough. A bit like Cripps, doesn't play all that well in the under-18s. Scouts sort of not sure about him, but his ability to get the ball out of the middle was enough.
He showed him enough last year. For mine, he's similar to Michael Annie.
Yep.
Press play go.
Yep. Fantastic. Andrew McWalter named West Coast coach a couple of days ago there. Are you surprised or not surprised?
No, I knew he was around the mark.
He did his apprenticeship there, obviously. What was it, for 14, 16 odd games there?
Yeah, 7 and 6, which is a result in the end. Heard Barmy interviewed about him today, actually, and Barmy speaks glowingly of him. So yeah, I'm
pretty
not
fair name to put on your resume, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
And I'm not real surprised. I'm not surprised that he's got the gig.
Yep.
And look, let's also remember, purely getting West Coast, it's not like you're going to a club who lack things off the ground. It's not like you're being forced to train at a different ground. You know, their second oval is the same size as the G, and all their facilities. So you got that. It's really you only got to worry about the playing side. You don't have to worry about anything else on the other side.
We'll dot the I's and cross the T's.
So,
you do what you do game day.
Yeah. So I don't reckon it's but the way the West Coast have gone the last couple of years. Purely if they got their fitness sorted out, all of a sudden they're going to improve a few spots in that way, let alone from the playing side of things and who they pick up.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon it's not a bad gig to get hold of.
Absolutely. Well, as a new coach, you've sort of got the Rolls-Royce incumbent in Harley Reid.
Yes.
You'd be pretty excited about that, wouldn't you? And do you sort of work with him to let him go? Because he looks like that kind of player that if you give him a little bit of rope, he's going to take it a mile.
Yeah, I think you have to nowadays. Yeah, the days as we
talked about
before.
The modern day coach.
Yeah, I think you'll have to.
Yep. Do we see West Coast advancing up the ladder a little bit with this little spike now, or do they still need to go through 2 or 3 years of a little bit of pain?
Well, again, you've got someone like Oscar Allen, who he showed enough by now to realise he's a pretty good player. Well, if you have him on the park, just purely play 20 odd games, that's going to improve him.
Absolutely.
So I think there's scope there, provided they got the guys on the park.
Absolutely. All right, mate, let's talk trade or trades or trade whispers at the moment. A couple of key players here. I'll just go through the list. You tell me what you think, mate. Devon Robinson from Brisbane.
He'll end up at West Coast.
Fair call. Matthew Owies. I was surprised from Carlton. I can't believe that either, but he'll find another home somewhere.
Yeah, it's just weird. That one doesn't add up whatsoever.
Even, as I said, even me as a Carlton supporter, I'm like, not sure. Matt Kennedy from Carlton as well.
Yeah, that one's a little bit of a surprise. Probably a question mark on his pace. He'll end up somewhere. North Melbourne, I would think, would be a distinct
or maybe an Essendon potentially.
Maybe, yeah.
Yep. John Noble for me was very surprising. Picked up mid-season draft a couple of years ago. Was a bit unlucky last year to be the 24th man out there, and came back this year with the right attitude and played well enough, but wants a trade and looks like he's a target of Gold Coast's.
Yeah, family are up there, and Noble family have always been pretty tight-knit, so probably have all lived apart for a while and all that. And yeah, I'm not totally shocked at that.
No.
Yeah.
Family reunion, all back together. Mate, this one is a big one for me. Jake Stringer. Collingwood, GWS.
I'll go GWS. The McCartney link.
Right. Not Sydney?
Sydney
lacked a forward in that finals.
They do lack a forward. There's no doubt about that.
They've got average forwards.
Yeah.
Not great forwards.
I think they played too tall as it was, and we spoke about that before the game. I think Stringer, he'll end up at one of the two.
Okay. So he'll be in the Harbour City no matter what, whether it's a little further west or a little bit more.
Get him out of the fishbowl environment.
Could be very interesting. Will Brodie from Fremantle.
Yeah, interesting. His lack of opportunities. Still a maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Harry Perryman, we've talked about briefly there. James Peatling.
In demand, 7 clubs.
I think the Crows would do very well if they did get him. I think that bolsters that midfield, doesn't it? Yep. Dan Houston, we've talked about. Shea Bolton and Liam Baker from Richmond. Do we see him following McWalter over to West Coast?
Possibly.
Or do they split them? One goes West Coast, one goes Freo.
I'm sure both clubs are going to be into them big time.
As you would be, yep.
Yeah.
Tim Membry,
Yeah, interesting that one, isn't it?
experienced player.
I'll back either signing at St Kilda or North Melbourne.
I'm probably a bit more on the North Melbourne. Luke Parker.
North Melbourne.
I think that one's already been pretty much confirmed. Tom Barras.
Yeah, Hawthorn.
Bailey Smith.
You still favour Geelong, but suddenly if Oliver's in the mix as well, whether that changes.
That was my next one. Was Clayton Oliver? Do we think that he'll end up at Geelong? What a midfield that'd be.
I'm bugging how they all fit them all in financially, though. That's got me a bit beat.
A lot of people. It seems like a lot of people take a bit of a haircut down at Geelong to fit these players in.
Isn't Oliver on $1 million a year for the next 6 years anyway?
Like
so
that.
how in the hell can you give him a haircut? Because you're going to have to make it a 9-year contract, and he's 26 now. So, yeah.
It's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't quite get that.
Is Petrarca's issue with Melbourne partly to do with what happened with Oliver at the start of the year? No pre-season. Then what happened, obviously, with him sort of compounded that a little bit?
Possibly. I know they're saying it's not, but, yeah, you still wonder.
We did talk about last week very, very briefly about Rory Sloane potentially entering the coaching ranks. It looks like Melbourne's a possibility, but I think that's a big loss for the Crows, really, isn't it? Surely you're making room to have him in there in some sort of leadership capacity.
But if I'm Rory Sloane, I reckon you want to get out of Adelaide. You want to go somewhere else. Go and
try something a bit different.
Go and do your apprenticeship somewhere else. The ones who end up staying at their own club get fish-tailed a bit there as well. So I think it's in his best interest.
But do you see him as a future coach, or do you see him as a future sort of leader as far as, player delegation and
I don't think
a bit more behind the scenes?
I don't think he'd know that himself yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not sure on the coaching side of things. I could see him being a great coach, don't get me wrong. I just don't quite see it right at the moment. I see him more in that leadership, younger players type capacity.
Go to another club, do development role, whatever, whether that's assistant or just purely development, either way.
So a bit like what happened with Van Berlo, he went over to West Coast, now he's back.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, very interesting.
I could see Ian Bassett being at Melbourne.
Well, I was going to talk about Nathan Bassett potentially heading off to Melbourne there. That was a little bit of a surprise, but not a surprise, if that makes sense. Melbourne was probably the surprise part of that.
Depends. Once McWalter left, it means there's a vacancy and that. So that's a possibility.
Yep. Fair enough. All right, let's stick with the AFL, mate. We'll move over to the AFLW. Round 5 was split over, basically a whole week.
Yeah, bizarre.
Richmond ended up getting up over Port Adelaide by 21 points. Carlton, unfortunately, on the receiving end of a 69-point hiding by North Melbourne. Hawthorn got up over Geelong. Collingwood just got the job done against the Suns. Essendon had their biggest win of their AFLW career of 65 points over Melbourne. And again, this is a surprise. Some of these teams that have been up there for a while, starting to falling away. The Bulldogs were the same. I think first couple of rounds only had a percentage of 13.
Yeah, it was weird.
It was really weird. Fremantle winning there by 11 points, and Sydney just going down to the Western Bulldogs. But then a couple of teams that have played earlier on in the week get another chance at it. North Melbourne getting up over Richmond there by 12 points. The Giants getting up over the Eagles by 24. Adelaide, unfortunately, arriving up in Brisbane just after they basically won the men's premiership and going down by 2 points.
Yeah, but Adelaide stuffed that up completely themselves. Yep. 5-on-1 in the goal square for a mark. They forced that ball through for a point, which they should have done. It was terrible.
Yep.
They ended up winning. Yep. Yeah, there was an unlucky mark paid at the end. I've watched it now about 5 times, and it is an umpiring error. He should have called play on and kicked the goal. So they were a bit unlucky there, but they made a couple of shocking errors themselves.
The old ifs, buts, and candy nuts. And what it's meant is now that the Crows go down to about 3rd spot on the ladder. So, and then to finish us off, Port Adelaide actually got the chocolates against Carlton. They won by 35 points at Alberton Oval. And now they're eyeing off a top 8 spot. So both Adelaide teams going all right.
Yeah, and now the Crows play Friday night And then next Wednesday, we've got 2 games in 5 days at the home of football.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Just before we go on with that, Port Adelaide had a Rising Star nomination. A couple of their young guns starting to shine.
Good to see Molly Brooksby, Red Leg girl. Okay, get acknowledged. Yeah, I rate Molly. She's a good mover.
Yep.
Good balance.
And it was the
Light
first.
foot.
Yep.
So yeah,
First good look I'd seen of obviously Brooksby there, but also Piper.
Yeah.
Piper Window there. She's got some talent there.
She
And
has.
geez, if they add India Rashid to that list, I think Port Adelaide are going to be a team for the next 5 years, 6 years that are going to be
doubt about that.
going to be fit.
They've got some good youth.
Absolutely. All right.
And I mean, bloody good youth.
Absolutely. Taking the long-term view there, obviously, with Port Adelaide. All right, let's talk about this week's matches. We'll get some tips, mate. The Cats v the Dockers tonight. This podcast will go out tomorrow, but let's see how we go.
We'll go the Cats.
I'm going to go the Dockers.
Yeah, it's a toss of the coin.
It is a toss of the coin. The Hawks v the Suns at Frankston there.
Let's go the Hawks.
I'm going to go the Hawks at home. Essendon v Sydney.
Yeah, Sydney's main ruckman's done out for the year as well. I'll go Essendon.
I'll go Essendon as well. Melbourne v the Giants.
Geez, Melbourne are terrible at the moment. I'll go the Giants.
I'm going to go the Giants there. You did talk about Adelaide playing St Kilda.
Yeah, I'll go for Adelaide.
Friday night at, as you said, Nord Oval, the home of football there. North Melbourne playing the Bulldogs.
Yeah, you got to go for North Melbourne.
Absolutely. And what do we got? Richmond v Collingwood.
I'll go Richmond.
I'm going to go Richmond there as well. West Coast v Port Adelaide. Over in WA.
I'll go West Coast.
I'm going to go West Coast as well. Carlton v the Brisbane Lions.
Go Brisbane.
I'm going to go Brisbane there as well. And then a couple more games here. I can't believe this page is going on forever.
Yeah.
The Suns v Essendon.
Jeez. It's longer than Blue Hills. I'll go Essendon.
Sydney v Geelong.
I'll go for Sydney.
I'll go for Sydney there. And the Dockers v the Hawks.
I'll go the Dockers.
All right, mate, we better take a very, very quick break. Coming up, basketball, the 36ers unfortunately off to a bit of a rocky start in the season. And the cricket, McAndrew with a couple of wickets there early on. We better give it some airtime.
Australia's still unbeaten.
Absolutely. And in the soccer, unfortunately, the Adelaide United team go down in the semi-final to Melbourne victory.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen.
Yep, thank you to Crazy.
Once again, thanks to our sponsors. Absolutely much appreciated. We kick off with the basketball, mate. Adelaide 36ers up to their old tricks again with a 0-2 start to the season. Where does this leave the 36ers?
They won't want to lose a few more because then there's enough anarchy with what happened at the start of the year with Scott Ninnis, and you can see them imploding Adelaide.
Yep. Does the coach get a pass mark for the first few games, or will the crowd turn because of the circumstances?
I think the crowd will just turn more to the administration. It won't be so much against the incumbent. It'll be more that what's happened
and how it happened.
How it happened,
Yep, absolutely. The 36ers playing the Illawarra Hawks. Adelaide are playing this weekend, but the Illawarra Hawks sitting top. Yep. And unfortunately, the 36ers starting in 8th position at the moment, desperate to open their account. All right, let's move on to cricket. Andrew McAndrews? Oh, I think I've got that wrong there. McAndrew started the season with
Nathan
McAndrew. Sorry.
Yep.
Started the season with 5 wickets in the first win a couple of weeks ago against WA. We didn't quite give it enough airtime because of the AFL finals, but I really wanted to point it out. Great start.
Yeah, it was because, and ironically, South Australia batted first and only got 217. The WA were cruising at 3 for 150 odd, and then just fell away and fell for the 3-card trick. 3 of them got caught on the boundary hooking, just fell away, and South Australia just kept chipping away, and he's a fierce competitor, Nathan McAndrew, and I love that about him. Got up, and then the next game against New South Wales was washed out. The South Australian girls beat ACT on the weekend, it's not often as a South Australian cricket supporter that you can say
undefeated
in October that we're undefeated.
There you go. Let's stay with the Saka and the Redbacks. Any changes that we see sort of coming in now that a few players might be returning from other duties?
Yeah, possibly. It's a little bit weird. We don't play again now to our first Shield game in a couple of weeks. So, therefore, hopefully, everyone will be up and about with district cricket this week and playing in district cricket, which doesn't happen very often. So, yeah, it'll be interesting whether a Travis Head actually plays for Tea Tree Gully this week or Alex Carey for Glenelg. So,
some interest there.
Yeah.
I'll be watching the socials for that. I'm sure a lot of the clubs will sort of promote that. Is this part of that change with Saka, with some of that allows some of those players to come back, or is it just the timing of the test schedule?
It's just the timing. Yeah. It's a little bit unusual that people are actually available. Now, this used to happen all the time. You know,
it's great for grade cricket.
I can remember a game, Kensington and Glenelg, where I scored against Glenelg as a kid, and you had the 3 Chapels and Jenna play, and Jenna play, and all the state players played. It was great.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see whether those guys are back from England or not. But I would hope they would. So we'll wait and see. With
the grade cricket, who do you see being the front runners at the moment? We've talked briefly about some changes. Lehman's changed and Fraser McGurk's changed.
Yeah, Wes Agar's also gone to Kensington.
Yep.
So all of a sudden they're probably a bit stronger. Glenelg amazingly made the grand final in all 3 comps last year, or made the grand final and then came second. They did make the grand final in all 3 comps and lost.
Yep.
Now West Torrens will be around the mark again. So, but Glenelg last year there'd have to be a pretty fierce desire that, hang on, we didn't deliver, we underachieved in the end. So. Whether the Seahorses, geez, I hate that name. Whether the Seahorses can come through this year, we wait and see.
We might have to get Guernsey to put up behind you there, mate. All good. Obviously, talking about Australia beating England in the one-dayer with the Duckworth-Lewis system being used. Some shady tactics.
Anyway, though, Australia.
But some shady tactics with slowing the game down. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Oh, look. You can't say Australia wouldn't have done it on the other foot either, but it was all pretty obvious, supposedly. You know, and he actually did it really poorly. Takes off his sock, and his ankle thing is perfect still. And so Ricky Ponting took the mickey out of it superbly.
He did. That's why I brought it up. I thought it'd be very interesting to see what happens there. Yeah. But Australia sort of were cruising there, 2-0 up, and then. Dropped a couple of games.
Also Travis didn't play one game. I went and think I don't get the last game at 2-2 and Alex Carey, who's performed really well, doesn't get picked.
Gets a rest.
I don't get that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Some selections there that make you scratch your head. Obviously, we talked about the women's there starting against Canberra there and winning. Let's move on to soccer. Adelaide United fall in the semi-final stage of the Australia Cup to Melbourne Victory 1-0.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing, but look, 1-0 obviously, fine line, and as we know, fine line between pleasure and pain.
Absolutely. MacArthur take out the title on Sunday night there against Victory 1-0. They've sort of been a club that's sort of come from nowhere.
And been good.
Absolutely, been very, very good. What are your thoughts for the Adelaide United for the season this year? They look like they're still developing.
Yeah.
That's probably my take on it at this stage.
Yeah, still going to be a real query if they're old enough and can be consistent enough. Will the youth, the inconsistencies of youth still contribute? Hopefully they can be a little bit better, but we'll just wait and see.
Yep. Let's talk some EPL, mate. We'll start with QPR with you. What's been happening in that neck of the woods?
Disappointing. Lost to Blackburn on Saturday. Bit of a silly send-off just before half-time when it was 0-0. And, fell away to lose 2-0 after that, which is disappointing. They actually play, tomorrow morning at 4:15, I think, against Hull.
So if I'm up early and message you, you'll probably be just checking in.
I'll be able to answer you. Don't worry about that.
Not a problem.
So,
anyone needs a book, you can certainly.
You can message me. I'll certainly be up. So the Premier League wise, look, Liverpool. So you've got Aston Villa drew with the Ipswich, which if they'd won, they would have gone to equal top of the table.
Yep.
But it's looking like, Arsenal up there as well. All of a sudden, there may be 3 or 4 challenges for one. And it'd be great to see it go down to the wire and not Man City just bolt in. So,
yes. Yeah. Well, at the moment, the top 4 is Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal, Chelsea. You little beauty. They are around the mark, Aston Villa. And obviously, the big one for us is Tottenham because of Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, and they've started to show a bit, beat Man United 3-0. And that's so, there's been improvement from Tottenham that they're up into 8th. So, Ange is probably a little bit back on steadier ground again. You don't want to lose a couple of games straight over there.
No, they love you one minute and not so happy with you the next. But he does have a pretty good record in his second year coaching at some of these clubs, and he did bring that up. Not to be cocky or anything, but he just brought it up saying, look, I've got a generally pretty good record second year round. But anyway, all right, mate, let's move on to what's coming up. On Friday, Greg Whittlesea, part 2. Really looking forward to that. That was a great interview. Absolutely. And Greg Quinn. Quinny obviously talking about the SANFL and the Anzac Day clash. Yeah,
look, it was an emotional interview with Quinny. Very open about his uncle no longer being with us, that side of things. Look, it's one of my favourites. I readily admit that because I think there's a fair bit of meaning in there. So, look, anyone who hasn't watched it, trust me, it's worth a listen.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's take a break.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
A dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
Flashbacks.
All right, before we go on to flashbacks for this week, we're going to have a look at some grand finals there. But like we said before, we thank our sponsors there.
Thank you to Craig Steen.
Craig Steen, Crash Repairs, and obviously Gary KRIEVS for Owens CASSERLY.
So Roger Steen Crash Repairs, who is his dad.
Yes.
And Craig now running.
Absolutely. So, if you need any work done, please go and visit them. All right, mate, we're going to take a bit of a look here at some classic grand finals. A couple of minutes to go in a couple of these grand finals, and they were all-time classics.
Buchanan put the head down. Got it out to O'Keefe. Kick smothered. Chick. Hunter. Swans do it. Sion!
West Coast obviously getting the job done there against Sydney there.
Pendlebury is through over the top. Will it sit to Dale?
And then the other one, the
Away
classic
from
grand
goal.
final
Gives it
between
back to
Collingwood
Taylor.
and St Kilda.
No sign of the Jolly Wobbles. He puts it through.
Not beyond him. About as tough as it gets for a left footer.
Oh,
For some. Brings it back to centre half forward. Belted away there by Reid. Schneider loves a goal in a grand final and delivers. And the Saints are back in this match in a big way.
finds Farron Ray, feeds it across towards Eddie. He's in trouble, taken down from behind. McCaffrey got it. Oh, and the kick away, 50-metre penalty.
Maxwell getting back. Kept his head over at Maxwell. The handball for Schneider. Can't quite break it. Gilbert. He's got it. They're in this now.
Schneider couldn't control it. Rebound out of the congestion. It runs on and touched.
Here is Hayes. Belting forward. Got it. Grand final today. The Saints have never been in front until now.
Sets it up. Shaw will fly from behind. Almost got hands to it. Spills out the back. Cloak has kicked the goal. Magpies back in front.
Hayes belting the ball forward. Johnson quickly off the mark. Milner at best. Ball bouncing. Scores a level.
Oh, no.
Goddard, the tap. Del Santo. It's going to be a draw. It's unbelievable. But it's happened.
So obviously some classic finals moments there, but probably the big one there is the draw between Collingwood and St Kilda and the bounce that took a Shane Warne right-hand turn right in that pocket there.
And
Fine line between pleasure and pain.
always wonder whether Milne could have attacked it a bit more. There's a couple of memories there. Adam Schneider playing, had gone from Sydney to St Kilda. Adam Schneider was New South Wales' main player in state primary school carnival when I umpired and South Australia won it with Scott Thompson, Kane Corns and Hayden Skipworth playing. So,
Yep.
yeah, there's a couple of memories there and it was quite funny. By fluke, I had the New South Wales three games in a row. And I said, yeah, give it on the inside, young fella. And, yeah, I should have, shouldn't I? Don't worry about me, though. I'm going the whole way. But it wasn't arrogant. But out comes the runner.
Mm.
Did he abuse you? No, sort of thing. Because they've grown up in a rugby environment and the referee is Sir,
Yes.
their attitude was totally different than over here. And the final game was at Richmond, or Hisense now, Richmond Oval then. Honestly, I'm in the bar afterwards with the New South Wales parents. Do you want another drink? No, I'm right, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
No, you better have another one. No, I'm right, sort of thing. I'm driving, blah, blah.
Yep.
But, yeah, just a totally different atmosphere and attitude. It's fascinating for mine.
Absolutely. And then the first bit of footage that we saw there was between West Coast and Sydney playing, obviously, those back-to-back finals and Sydney getting the chocolates on the first occasion and then West Coast getting it on the second occasion. Some classic names in those teams there. Holy moly. Ben Cousins was still strutting around for West Coast on that occasion.
And probably an appropriate result that it was 1-1 between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Leo Barry, you beauty in the first one. And,
yes.
Yeah, then the West Coast machine in the second. Yes, you always still wonder that prelim final where Ben Cousins burnt Nathan Van Berlo and no one ever's done that before or since.
And he couldn't believe it. Yep.
Yes. So wonder.
What do we think if St Kilda had got the chocolates against Collingwood the first time round? Changes everything, doesn't it?
You just don't know, yeah.
Does it add to Ross Lyon's legacy?
Well, yeah, because everyone's saying, he hasn't won a premiership, and it just changes everything. Like now, Fagan's laughing; he's got the money in the bank now.
Yep.
They lose that they lose that qualifying them, and they're 44 points up. Oh, geez, that Fagan can't coach. So again,
hasn't played at the highest level, can't coach. Yep. Fair enough. All right, mate. Let's scoot into the extra time. Big finish.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, to kick us off today in the tennis, Sinner may not be the saint after all after WADA decided to appeal the decision regarding his physio cream defence.
I've read that one. I'm unusually for me, I'm very much on the fence and just can't quite work it out enough. It's weird, but he's looking at 2-year ban, big time.
That is huge.
Yeah.
Obviously,
massive.
It had come up that there'd been a problem. It then obviously
Everyone's
almost
sort of
got
forgotten about. Yeah,
It got brushed under the carpet a little bit.
Yeah, for a while, and now, hey,
He's
come back.
Could be in a big trouble.
Yeah.
Now, last week, mate, we had the little sort of
question,
wager about the question of how many Aussie players inside the top 50. I think you went 5 and I went 4.
Yeah.
Well, we were both just out by a couple, mate. 3 players inside the top 50. But we've got 10 players inside the top 100. So I think that's sort of where it's...
Yeah, well, it's on the right lines where we're saying there's probably more depth now than there's been for a long time. And, 10 out of the top 100, when you consider how many nations are having a crack
these days,
tennis,
yep.
And it's just huge. It's not like it was a few years where there was only a few. It's just a ridiculous number. So 10 out of 100 is a very, very promising, and hopefully a couple of them keep developing. And there's Alex Denham around the mark.
Yeah, well, he slipped to number 11 in the world, but that's due to injury.
Yeah.
They've got some good juniors coming up. It's just a matter of, once again, those juniors taking that next step. And will we see the effect of Ash Barty over the next few years with some of these junior players now coming into their own?
You really hope, don't you?
Absolutely. All right, mate, let's move on to the NRL. Huge results over the weekend in the prelim finals. The Storm getting up over the Roosters 48-18.
Bolted in again.
They are just the team to watch. But the team that's been there for the last couple of years, the Penrith Panthers, knocking off the Sharks 26-6, and they're a formidable opposition come this weekend's final.
It's bizarre. You're saying, well, this is potentially mouth-watering game. And not even there's a huge rugby person compared to footy, but like last week, I think we're all salivating thinking Sydney, Brisbane will go down to the wire.
Yep.
It'll be in the crunch the last few minutes, and it was over well before half time. Same thing here. Before the game, you're going, geez, you toss the coin, rah. So who knows? Wait and see. I look forward to listening to HG and Roy. I always enjoy their
they actually do a pretty good coverage. Absolutely. Who's your prediction, mate? Penrith or Melbourne?
I'm going to go Melbourne. Toss the coin.
Melbourne needs something to celebrate. They had no teams in the AFL Grand Final, so maybe they could take one out in the NRL. For me, I'm probably going to lean towards the Storm, but I think the Panthers could do it again.
Either way.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to motorsport. Ricardo,
Yeah.
all but done in Formula One after not being offered a spot with a team at the moment for 2025.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be on the reserves bench. So, yeah.
What's gone so wrong with Ricardo? Why?
I don't know.
Why isn't teams jumping at his services, considering he looks like he's got all the talent in the world?
Well, you wonder if he might be a bit too demanding for his own good. Who knows?
Potentially.
That's the way it reads from the outside.
Yeah.
But, who knows?
And the other big one in motorsport is the Bathurst 1000 is not too far away. It's probably the grand final as far as the V8 supercars go. It's always a great weekend. Whack it on Sunday, have it on in the background.
Well, it's Sunday weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll predict one thing, that Roger James gets the 3 votes off the ground there at Bathurst again. He's done that a few times, Roger.
We might follow that up next week, and obviously with the Bathurst 1000 starting next week. And to finish us off, baseball, the playoffs are getting closer with wild card spots up for grabs. The Tigers, Astros, Kansas City Royals, Baltimore Orioles, New York Mets, Milwaukee Brewers, Atlanta Braves, and San Diego Padres are all participating in a wild card round.
It's just incredible, though, that if you can get through and then progress, how much that means.
Well, what it does is that practically all 12 teams that are remaining could potentially take it out.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't this what's happening with world sport at the moment? The equalisation is just making it even more and more exciting.
Yep.
Any one of the teams can win it, as I just mentioned there, but New York and Los Angeles, for their particular sides of the draw, are the number one seeds. Unfortunately, the Red Sox not making a wild card spot or the playoffs. Unfortunately, I'm hoping that management decides to invest in some players.
Yes.
All right, to finish this off, mate, the good, the bad, the ugly for this week, or a rulebook rant. Your choice, mate. Player's choice.
I'm going to go the good just in terms of how systematic Brisbane were, how organised, structured, delivered. Warning signs on pretty early. Even that first quarter where they'd taken 10 marks inside 50 to 1, I thought, shit, that's a huge discrepancy in an important stat. Some of the stats are like we talk about ruck hit-outs to advantage, the way they do it, a Mickey Mouse.
Yep.
But that one for me was big. So I thought the warning signs were there, and, they came through. Covered it a little bit earlier with just the Brisbane togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the bad's got to be Sydney, just how putrid they were.
Yep.
That they didn't come to, the old line didn't come to play. And, so they were very disappointing. Now, I think that covers it in terms of the good and the bad and ugly all in one.
Fair call. My good for the weekend was obviously Brisbane second team coming outside the top 4 to win it. And I think the second team since the Crows to win it from an elimination final or somewhere in there.
And Bulldogs in 16.
That's correct. My other good for the week is the South Australian women's in the cricket there. 2-0 starting point there.
Yep.
Sitting top of the table, which is always nice. I think you're right. My bad and ugly are probably Sydney a little bit, and probably a little bit the 36ers in that, they promise so much but just don't quite deliver, and that's where our problems are. So that's where we're at, mate. Once again, huge episode. Thank you for your time once again.
Thanks,
obviously, we've got a special guest coming up on Thursday. We'll release that, Glenelg Premiership player Cole Gerloff. So look out for that one on your socials. And as we say per usual, we promise to do better. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportscastSA. We'll see you next time on Game On.